Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Block, and I'm the User Engagement Librarian here on campus. And this is our inaugural episode of the Stories of IUS. And this idea came to me because we've all been isolated for the past year and a half. We're still not really out of the woods, but even before that, it's pretty easy to get siloed and isolated, like in our individual departments and offices. And I figured since libraries are full of stories, it might be great to feature some of the human stories of IUS. And also too, to give people an opportunity to talk about themselves as more than just a university employee and more than just their identity as somebody who works here. So that's the goal, is just informal conversation. And it's kind of a nod to the Human Library Project that started in 2000 in Copenhagen. So with that, I've got Dr. Subhranil De with us, Suvs, as he is more affectionately known to people. And Suvs, how are you doing? We're just going to jump into it.
Well, glad to be here, Courtney. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. So we were kind of talking earlier about but before I hit record here, about how, yeah, the impact that being away from campus and away from connecting with people. And so I'm just sort of curious, like, how are you feeling now that things are opening up a little bit?
I feel better than how I was feeling before things changed to any extent.
Yeah.
But right now it's almost in that transient phase where it's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
And that can create a lot of confusion and confusing open-endedness with the present state of things. So it's still like a complex, somewhat of a complex mindset, at least for me, and at least many people I know. But it's definitely, to make a long story short, it's better than how it was last year when we did not have any protection and no even whatever real and along with that psychological protection the status of vaccination gives you.
Yeah.
So that was definitely scary. Yeah, so overall it's better than that, but not nearly perfect yet. Yeah.
I know. I feel like we're all sort of feeling that weird liminality. And so one of the goals of this series is to give people the opportunity to share some things about themselves as more than just, their university identity. On campus, you're a physics professor, but that's not just who you are. That's not the sum total of your being. So is there anything that you want to lead off with or chat about, or things that are important to you, or maybe your photography, things you've been doing?
Yeah, photography has been one of my fond hobbies for a long time. I have no technical or professional training, so I would like to call myself a hobby photographer, mostly nature and roadside, if I am to label my taste in photography. But that is one thing that I engaged in to a great extent during this whole pandemic phase, because once again, it has been hardly ideal with a gregarious person like me, who is like so social and gregarious, and I love the company of human beings. And so for someone like me, it has definitely been unpleasant and heavy at times. But one of the silver linings, probably all negative situations, maybe not all, but many negative situations or phases in life still have their silver linings. So for me, among the silver linings that I have had is the fact that with the fond avocations or hobbies, whatever you call them, like writing or photography, that I can engage in, that I do by the nature of those activities, engage in when I am by my lonesome. I have done that to a greater extent, much greater extent during this time, because I was by my lonesome most of the time.
Yeah.
So I have written more, I have engaged in photography more. And you have seen some of my photographs that I shared with you. I do not have any place on the internet because when it comes to just sharing with the broader world, I tend to be somewhat shy, if that's the way to put it. So people I know and trust who are part of my social life already, I do share with them, but I'm not on social media, any kind of social media. I don't have a platform where I share my activities. But like my endeavor with writing this book that I'm finally about to do something with my photographs as well, some friends have asked me to upload some favorite photographs somewhere on the internet, and there are all kinds of different options. And I've talked to David Rainbolt about some options. So like in the near future, I might do that as well. But so far, like it's only they have circulated among my close a group of human beings that I trust, and they're not out in the in the clouds.
Yeah.
And interestingly, one of the things that is related to the fact that I love photography, and I did engage in photography much more than usual during this whole 1.5 year pandemic phase, is the fact that I when I come here, the Ohio Valley was a pleasant surprise to me, because I did not know what to expect. Just like another average layman who has never lived in the Midwest, I was imagining like flat country, Midwest Indiana, something along those lines. And then when I interviewed for this place and I learned more, I was intrigued. And I remember on my day of, on the day of my interview, it was snowing to some extent, not too much really by Minnesota standards. I was living in Minnesota, so I was surprised by how people were freaking out by like an inch of snow. But the roads were getting somewhat icy, so that was bad, definitely. And it was quite misty. So interestingly, like because it was so misty, the visibility was really bad. And Dr. Forinash, during the interview, he told me that there are some rolling hills and cliffs nearby that you cannot see right now because of the mist, but it's quite picturesque with the undulating terrains of the Ohio Valley. And my reaction was, really, rolling hills and cliffs, and we cannot see them now because of the mist? Okay, we'll see, like if I eventually get here. And then like when I got here that day, it was so gorgeous. It was still August, but somehow that day it was very pleasant, and there was no haze, nothing. It was all crisp and transparent, and I saw the knobs and the undulating terrain, and I was like, yeah, this is like the Hudson Valley. It's like upstate New York. Feels like I have come back home. Wow. So the Ohio Valley, I was pleasantly surprised by the enchantment that this region could offer in terms of natural beauty. But at the same time, I got into the state of mind where it was like, okay, this is home now. It should be home for hopefully years to come. And there's no hurry to explore like in detail. It'll happen like slowly, but it will take its time. And like during long weekends, I would fly to a different place, often the northeast of the US, New York and New England. But again, another silver lining of the pandemic phase was that during this 1.5 year phase, because I was trapped in town and like the surroundings of this town. So really, I did not travel out of town in that sense. I was almost compelled to explore whatever is here in the Ohio Valley, and I did to some extent. And yeah, it was delightful to be able to capture, even like within my humble capacity, to be able to capture some of the natural beauty of the Ohio River Valley. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to hear. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about some of the photos that you've shared with me. And what I think is so wonderful are the reflections that you accompany your photos with, and the writing. And it's always so lovely to read. And there's a couple of thoughts that I have. I think that there's something maybe in there that people might assume, like a physicist, is not gonna maybe be so artistic or muse about the beauty of nature. I mean, I don't know if that is or isn't a stereotype, but I think I really think it's wonderful to see these very different sides of people. And then I also think it's wonderful how you connect your photos with other experiences that you've had and other parts of the world as well. So I just didn't know if you have any thoughts or comments on that.
This is a topic very close to my heart, as you can imagine, very close to my heart. So if anything, I will have to try to make it very brief, relevant and honest, but very brief for the scope of this wonderful interview we are having. First of all, I think that stereotype is true and very universal. So I remember in high school, our teacher of Bengali, and he was a great teacher, he would also say things like, of course, the scope of science is, if I try to crudely translate into English, it would sound something like, the scope of science is crude, dry objectivity. It has nothing to do with beauty. So that is just so wrong. And then I also remember in high school itself, so in India, it's like 10 plus 2. So by high school, I understand the 11th and the 12th grade. So in those 2 grades, well, we needed to pick an additional subject, which was like an optional subject that you pick, where you learn some things that are that go beyond the regular curriculum. So like an AP course in a way. So
Okay.
some level of advanced education on that subject or topic. So for me, that was mathematics, and that was delightful. And then there was this famous quote by Bertrand Russell on the inside cover of the mathematics book that we had for that additional mathematics course. And it talked about the beauty of mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that even though I was still very young and I was still in high school, whatever I could understand of that quote, it resonated with the way I felt about mathematics. And what in a way was for me, even as a student, a high school student, the motivation to engage in the study of physics and mathematics to start with. So my reaction was, and I had some wonderful classmates, most of whom are still treasured friends to the present day. And they loved literature, poetry, and some of them loved mathematics, physics, sciences, biology. And we talked about this topic from time to time then as well. And then the group of us who were in the additional mathematics course and who also read that quote by Russell, we ruminated about that. And then we even thought of confronting in a playful way that Bengali teacher, what do you think of this? And we decided against it because that would not have been a good idea at the end of the day. But so this conflict is probably timeless and placeless. Um, uh, when people think like that, it does hurt me because, and again, here I'm, as you can probably sense, I'm trying to make a detailed, complex, heartfelt array of things, very condensed and brief for the present purpose. But beauty is subjective, first of all.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that within my very humble capacity, what I try in terms of at least writing or photography, or even the kind of mathematical adventures I engage in, the very modest mathematical puzzles I sometimes coin and try to solve and share with the mathematical community. I'm grateful that at least some other people, a small group of people, find them to be beautiful, or some find some aesthetic quality in those endeavors. But at the end of the day, beauty is subjective. So even within mathematics, I may find a certain theorem or a mathematical concept aesthetically pleasing, beautiful, and somebody else may not. And that happens all the time. Like physicists may be talking about if some aspect of the theory of special relativity is beautiful, and then somebody would say, but general relativity is so much richer, and that has like more of an intricate, richer beauty. And then somebody would say, no, but beauty lies in simplicity. Actually, this is more appealing than that. And the subjectivity becomes very palpable. So even within the same field or notion, people might disagree about like what they find to be beautiful and where they agree or disagree. So it's not surprising that somebody who is a non-scientist and somehow never had the opportunity to be drawn to science would have that kind of an overall opinion about science itself. Because when somebody says something like mathematics is so dry, how can somebody feel the motivation to engage in it? And then people would also sometimes have an idea along the lines of somehow like they're very dry, logically minded people who would be drawn to something like mathematics or a mathematical science like physics, which is not the way they would perceive beauty. But then my reaction to that would be, first of all, that is not true, because there is a kind of a beauty, sometimes a cold and austere kind of a beauty, as Russell put in his famous quote, that quote about mathematics. But at the end of the day, even austere or dry are things that are hard to articulate, because these are intangible feelings or reactions that we have to things. So to make a long story short, I, being someone who is moved by the beauty of poetry or paintings or photography, well, in my own way, within my humble capacity, I know that for me and many other scientists, the motivation to engage in some kind of scientific endeavor is that some appeal of beauty, so something aesthetic that beckons from therein.
Yeah, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. And as you were talking, I'm thinking that hopefully this past year and a half, and still, as we're still dealing with this pandemic, hopefully we've had a moment or two where we could spend contemplating that notion of beauty and seeing it around us, even though things are really scary, and still feel sort of liminal and unsure.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I agree with you. And conversations like this is definitely one way to try to address the world filled with constraints that we are still living in.
Yes, and I think also too that these conversations, I don't think happen enough within under the auspices of the academy, and people feeling comfortable about expressing certain parts of themselves, or expressing just the complex human beings that we all are. Because I really wonder, if we spent more time really talking in deeper ways with one another, what we would really discover.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I have a suspicion that a lot of people feel like you were saying, a lot of scientists probably also feel that same way.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. All resonating. Yeah, yeah.
And I think this has been a really wonderful inaugural interview for our Stories of IUS feature. I wish that we could just spend even more time chatting. But I want to end with like a little bit of a silly question.
Sure, yeah.
What's your favorite candy, Subs?
Um, the brand.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Okay, my favorite brand is Côte d'Or. CEO, the O with a circumflex accent, I think. I should know that. TE, Coast d'Or, so D apostrophe OR, so of gold, Coast of Gold. It's the old French name of Ghana, I think, because that's where the Belgians, it's a Belgian brand, so they used to get the cocoa beans from. That is my favorite brand. So I have quite a few brands that I love, including Ghirardelli, Nestle, Häagen-Dazs is for ice cream, but Ghirardelli, Nestle, and Lindt, definitely Lindt, one of the Swiss brands that you find here from time to time, Frey. So these are some of my favorites. But Côte d'Or is at the top of the list, and I can't say for sure if it's partly because you don't find it here. Somehow you don't find Côte d'Or, which is why it's unfamiliar to most Americans, at least I think in most areas. So that's a Belgian brand, Coast of Gold. Yeah, that's my favorite, the top favorite brand of chocolate.
I love that. I love how animated like that question.
Well, I'm animated by default most of the time anyway, as you know. But yeah, chocolate is also close to it's yeah, one of the prime components that comprises my soul. So
yes, that is a perfect
yeah.
soundbite.
I'm a yeah, helpless chocoholic, and when I pride in the fact that to the best of my knowledge, I had no exposure to so-called addictive substances and things along those lines. But I do have my own problem of being a chocolate addict. Then people would take that as a joke, and it's probably still a much better kind of a issue than a so-called classic addiction problem. But then I would have to say, like, no, I am really addicted to chocolate. I love my chocolate. I consume a lot of chocolate every day, and it's probably not good.
Right. Right. This, yeah, I think this is a lovely insight into who you are to end on. And I hope that people watching or listening, reach out maybe to you. It's my hope that maybe like we all just get to learn a little bit more about each other, in a capacity other than just our clinical sort of roles at the university. So hopefully somebody watching or listening to this will reach out one day and chat with you about the beauty of nature.
May I add something, because I feel like adding so much here, but briefly add a few sentences about this theme that we touched on today. So when in grad school, I remember getting into heated arguments about what is more beautiful, say in the context of mainly poetry or music, sometimes science as well. Like I had a friend, a dear friend, he is a great guy, but he loved Baroque music and his favorite composer was Bach. And my favorite composer by far is Mozart. So I have a few hundred Mozart CDs in my humble CD collection. One of those little things I'm playfully proud of. So, and then he used to criticize Mozart to be shallow, and like Glenn Gould, I think, was famous for criticizing Mozart for similar reasons. And I would get very offended. And then I would try to prove to him how like Bach is actually inferior to Mozart as a reaction to that. And then at some point I realized these things are so futile. It does not help. It does not really contribute to any edification. If you like something and it's not hurting anyone, just go for it.
Yes.
We spend so much time arguing about what is superior, what is supreme, like within the field of aesthetics and art and like beauty above, and what is pleasant in life, what is rewarding in life in general. We spend so much time arguing. And instead of that, if we could just sincerely engage in what we love, and if a few other people find those endeavors beautiful and they have overlaps with you regarding what you find to be beautiful, and then sincerely try to resonate and do something constructive, that is much more important than the never-ending futile arguments about what is more beautiful and what is superior, what is bad taste and what is good taste, and so forth. And it's just a waste of energy most of the time. And that's one of the things I feel often. And that's one of the reasons I kind of shied away for a long time, and I probably stay that way largely in the future as well, about sharing my humble endeavors, especially when it comes to writing and photography, with the broader world in a social media kind of a way. Because to be honest, for the longest time, I did not think much about my writing. And only when like some friends, they kept telling me, kind of pushing me to try to do something a little broader, reach a broader audience with perhaps something like a book. I was like, okay, why not? Like, I'll try something and see, like, maybe some people will like it. So yeah.
Why not? Why not? I love that. I think that's such a beautiful and poetic and philosophical soundbite to focus on, especially just coming out of like the past year and a half and still dealing with what we're all going through, you know, like, why not focus on what brings you joy?
Yeah.
You know? Well, thank you so much, Subs. This has been so great. I am going to stop the recording here, but thank you for being our inaugural interviewee.
Thank you so much for having me, Courtney. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And thank you again. I'm grateful.